Reverend and dear sir, last week I was surprised with the unexpected favor of your letter, with one from Mr. John McLaurin, who may well make me blush at the consideration of my vileness to receive such undeserved testimonies of respect from servants of the Lord at so great a distance, and that have been so highly favored and honored of God as you have been. Pleasant and joyful are the accounts which we have lately had from Scotland concerning the kingdom of our God there, for which we in the world are especially indebted to you, who have honored your dear Lord and refreshed and served his church by the accounts you have published in your narrative and journals of the work of God in Kilsyth and other parts in the West Scotland. Future generations will own themselves indebted to you for those accounts. I congratulate you, dear sir, on the advantages God has put you under to favor the Church of God with a narrative of his glorious works, by having made you the instrument of so much of them, and giving you such glorious success in your own congregation. The accounts which we have received from you are, on some accounts, more pleasant and agreeable than what we have had to send to you. The work of God with you has been less mixed with error and extravagance. You have taken a more wise and prudent care to prevent things of that nature, or to suppress them as soon as they have appeared, and ministers that have been the principal promoters of the work have seemed to be more happily united in their sentiments, and so under greater advantage to assist one another, and to act as co-workers and fellow-helpers. You have heard great things from New England of late, which I doubt not have refreshed and rejoiced your hearts, and indeed great and wonderful have the things been in which God has passed before us. But now we have not such joyful news to send to you. The clouds have lately thickened, and our hemisphere is now much darkened with them. There is a great decay of the work of God amongst us, especially as to the awakening and converting influence of the Spirit of God, and the prejudices there are, in a great part of the country, are riveted and inveterate. The people are divided into two parties, those that favor the work and those that are against it, and the distinction has long been growing more and more visible, and the distance greater until there is at length raised a wall between them up to heaven, so that one party is very much out of the reach of all influence of the other. There is very much owing to imprudent management in the friends of the work, and a corrupt mixture which Satan has found means to introduce, and our manifold sinful errors by which we have grieved and quenched the Spirit of God. It can scarcely be conceived of what consequence it is to the continuance and propagation of a revival of religion, that the utmost care be used to prevent error and disorder among those that appear to be the subjects of such a work, and also that all imaginable care be taken by ministers in conducting souls under the work, and particularly that there be the greatest caution used in comforting and establishing persons as being safe and past danger of hell. Many among us have been ready to think that all high raptures are divine, but experience plainly shows that it is not the degree of rapture and ecstasy, although it should be to the third heavens, but the nature and kind that must determine us in their favor. It would have been better for us if all ministers here had taken care diligently to distinguish such joys and raised affections as were attended with deep humiliation, brokenness of heart, poverty of spirit, mourning for sin, solemnity of spirit, a trembling reverence towards God, tenderness of spirit, self-jealousy and fear, and great engagedness of heart after holiness of life, and a readiness to esteem others better than themselves, and that sort of humility that is not a noisy, showy humility, but rather this which disposes to walk softly and speak trembling. And if we had encouraged no discoveries or joys, but such as is manifestly wrought this way, it would have been well for us. And I am persuaded we shall generally be sensible before long that we run too fast, when we endeavor by our positive determinations to banish all fears of damnation from the minds of men, though they may be true saints, if they are not such as are eminently humble and mortified, and what the apostle calls rooted and grounded in love, Ephesians 3:17. It seems to be running before the Spirit of God. God by his Spirit does not give assurance or any other way than by advancing the things in the soul. He does not wholly cast out fear, the legal principle, but by advancing and filling the soul full of love, the evangelical principle. When love is low in the true saints, they need the fear of hell to deter them from sin and engage them to exactness in their walk, and stir them up to seek heaven. But when love is high and the soul is full of it, we don't need to fear. And therefore a wise God has so ordered it that love and fear should rise and fall like the scales of a balance. When one rises, the other falls, as there is need, or as light and darkness take place of each other in a room. As light decays, darkness comes in, and as light increases and fills a room, darkness is cast out. So love, or the spirit of adoption, casts out fear, the spirit of bondage. And experiences convinces me that even in the brightest and most promising appearances of new converts, it would have been better for us to have encouraged them only, as it were, conditionally, after the example of the apostle in Hebrews 3, verse 5, whose house are we, if we hold fast to confidence and the rejoicing of the hope firm unto the end. And Hebrews 3, verse 14, for we are made partakers of Christ, if we hold the beginning of our confidence steadfast unto the end. And after the example of Christ in Revelation 2, verse 10, be thou faithful unto death, and I will give you a crown of life. It is probable that one reason why God has allowed us to err is to teach us wisdom by experience of the ill consequences of our errors. What you relate of the opposition of the seceding ministers is very surprising, especially of the two Erskines, whose writing, especially Mr. Ralph Erskine's Gospel Sonnets, have been in great repute among God's people here. But this is a day of wonders of various kinds. I have reason to admire divine condescension in making any use of anything I have written for the defense of the work of God in Scotland. As to what you propose concerning my writing and narrative and so on, I am not conveniently situated for it, living in an extreme part of the land and 100 miles from the press, as well as on many other accounts unfit for it. But Thomas Prince of Boston, who is every way fit, and under good advantages for it, has already undertaken it, and I suppose will prosecute the undertaking, so far as it shall be thought for God's glory. I hope, dear sir, you'll remember me in your prayers. Never was I so sensible in any measure how vain a creature man is, what a leaf driven of the wind, what dry stubble, what poor dust, a bubble, a shadow, and nothing, and a more vain than nothing. And what a vain and vile, helpless creature I am, and how much I need God's help in everything as of late. Dear sir, don't forget New England, and don't forget your affectionate and obliged brother and servant and an unworthy fellow laborer, Jonathan Edwards.